Is it? All right. I'm going to call to order a meeting of the Houghton City Council for Wednesday, August 25th, 2021. Would everybody please stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is the roll call, and I will just tell everyone that all council people are here this evening, all the councilors. All right, review and approval of the agenda.
I have nothing.
All right, then we will go with what's before us. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the council? Would you come forward and identify yourself?
Hello, my name is Gail Sanchez. I'm a landlord here in Houghton, but that's not why I come up here at the moment. On Friday, July 30th, I was holding a garage sale at my neighbor's apartment complex right on College Avenue across from Flagstar Bank. When I witnessed a woman hit by a pickup truck pulling a boat. Sorry about the emotion, but the visual in my mind is still there as if it just happened. Anyway, my husband, my son, and I witnessed it along with several people at our garage sale. My son immediately got on the phone and dialed 911, and by the third ring, I said, my impatient self, as I am, said, not waiting for that. I called right to the office here in the Houghton Police Department, where Polly picked it up before the first ring stopped, told her what happened, and within seconds, John Donnelly himself, and I can't even remember if it was 4 to 5 other police officers were there on the scene, which is the start of the construction there, to control the traffic while this poor woman lay what looked lifeless in the street. I could not be more grateful to John and his staff for what they did and their response time. And within a minute after that, there was an ambulance on the scene. Fortunately, this woman, last I heard, was doing well. She did survive what happened there. But here's my point. 15 rings to 911 and no one picked up. But John and his team were there within a minute, even in the construction traffic. And for that, I think they need to be publicly commended for their response time. Okay? And likewise to the fire department, every time one of my tenants starts a pot of food on fire at my neighbor's apartment complex, you're there before I even get notice from the fire alarm company. So it is comforting to know that my local municipality will send help right away when 911, for whatever reason, isn't picking up. And I just thought John and his team deserve that recognition. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. All right. Is there anybody else who would like to address the council at this time? All right, moving along. Petitions and communications.
We have none.
All right, then at this time, I will call to order a public hearing of proposed ordinance 2021-322.
Okay, this is a public hearing on the proposed changes to the zoning ordinance. These were approved, they're the product of the planning commission putting together a subcommittee to look at changes to the zoning ordinance post, the approval and acceptance of our last master plan, part of the process, every time we do the master plan. The proposed changes contained in here went through public hearing and a vote in the planning commission and were forwarded to the council in this form. There was let me just give a general summary of what those changes were in the ordinance, and then we can just open it up for public comment. In general, the zoning ordinance subcommittee was myself, Councilor Needham, Bill Letter, the vice chair of the planning commission, and Christine Bradoff, with the assistance of Ann and Jeff as well, Jeff being the code enforcement person for the city and being the really good keeper of notes and records. Thank you. But looking through this, the proposed changes in general, we're looking at minimum lot sizes, setbacks, density requirements within like an R3 district. There's some question about that. Parking and bicycle standards, looking at some possible changes to, parking standards, especially when it came to commercial development in a lot of cases, some of the residential, but also commercial development. And there was a lot of cleanup work, adding some new invasive species to the, I call it the landscaping requirements, that we didn't want people planting these invasive species. But then going through, addressed some questions of short-term rentals in the city, allowing short-term rentals in the city in certain districts under certain circumstances. And then going through, signage, and also then looking at what might triggers be for site plan review at the planning commission, because there was really some vagary, that had kind of developed as to what we needed to do site plan review for, what shouldn't require site plan review. So we, that was a months-long process, and felt these were cleaned up. And again, the planning commission forwarded this version onto the council for consideration for changing chapter 98 of the zoning ordinance.
And I'll briefly add, as a member of the planning commission, if that's okay, Bob, that everything he said is accurate, and after a lot of conversation, we unanimously recommended it to the council. I usually like to point out how the vote went at the planning commission, so it was supported by everybody when it was passed to us here.
And if I may add, this wouldn't be the final word on the zoning ordinance. We got to a certain point where we got a lot of work done. Pending these changes, we would probably get right back to work, because there's some other, I'm going to say, some smaller fish to fry. But we wanted to get this codified, because it was a kind of a large slug of work, and then we get right back to work looking at other items in the zoning ordinance as well.
Now, this is a public hearing, so is there anybody that would like to comment at this public hearing? Come on up.
Hi, John Jimmy. And sorry, I meant to have something prepared, but I had a busy couple of days here. But no, I just wanted to commend on when it comes to the density of parking for this zoning change, of how important this is going to be for the city of Houghton to grow and continue to move forward. And also highlight that this has been an issue since the early 2000s. I remember standing in front of some of these council members in the spring of 2008, looking at the density requirements at that time that didn't make sense, that didn't make sense today, they still don't make sense, and this is finally a really good direction and something that makes sense. So I think that's really exciting to see. It's been a struggle for developers for a long time in the city of Houghton. So I think looking at the density, looking at the parking requirements are really great stride in the right direction for the city of Houghton. And we'll finally create an atmosphere, I think, where developers can come in and say, we don't need to look at getting 3 or 4 variances to get a project that's viable through. A good plan, a good zoning ordinance allows for projects to come and happen without hopefully having to have lots of variances. So, anyways, yeah, been fighting this fight since 2008, and I'm glad to see it finally come to fruition this many years later. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak at this public hearing? Anybody on the council comments? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, move supported to close this public hearing. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? This public hearing is closed. I will now call to order a public hearing regarding proposed ordinance 2021-323.
Okay, this is a request for rezoning as opposed to a change to the zoning ordinance. It's been requested by the owner, by a spokesperson, Mr. Barry Polzin is here on behalf of the property owner, is requesting the rezoning of lots 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 of Block 8 of the Supervisor's Plat of East Houghton. This would be the area immediately north of the Pearl Street Mall, between the Pearl Street Mall and College Avenue, just for everybody's edification. Requesting a rezoning of that property from R3 multifamily to R4, the redevelopment ready zoning designation. And, you know, I guess their purpose for this is they have a proposed development they would like to construct on that property. And R4 offers a more favorable setback and parking situation for that proposed development. So I don't know how much to add to that, other than this is a public hearing and it would be time for the council to hear from the public. This was also considered at the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission looked at this, held a public hearing on it, and then unanimously voted with an abstention, I believe, to move this forward to the council for the consideration that you'll be making tonight. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Right. Is there anybody who would like to, at this public hearing, speak regarding this proposed ordinance?
I would like to speak. I'm Barry Polzin, I'm an architect out of Marquette, and we're representing the property owners. Yeah, we requested this rezoning just to make the property more usable for what we're really trying to accomplish. And that is some real higher end, high quality student housing with a little more density. The big issues with the R3 versus the R4 is the setback. Now these are 100-foot lots, very typical platted lot. And we want to build indoor covered parking. So that is really one of the goals for this project, because parking is a problem everywhere in the winter, and indoor parking would be fantastic. And also with the higher end project. With the setbacks on the R3, we only have 60 foot to build in, and we need 60 foot on the inside. So we just need a few more feet to build the proper width to have indoor parking. So that's really the number one is the dimensional issues with the R3 to R4. R4 gives us, quite a bit more space, but we don't even need all of it. We just need a few more feet. Again, we don't want to do variances, so we thought, well, this is a way to take care of this. The other issue is the parking requirements for R3 are excessive. We've proven this across the country, and we know that, in fact, student housing in general is really about half the students have cars at most universities. What we're looking at here is a 75% kind of parking to the bed count, and that's really kind of realistic for the market that we're going after. So R4, of course, has half of the requirement for parking as R3. Again, we're not looking to only do half the parking, we're looking to do 75%, but R4 allows us to do that. I guess the other issues here are just by being able to use a little bit more of the property, we're going to have a very controlled access to and from the parking. There's one driveway in Alpha College. You come and go, and you're in a garage. The cars aren't stuck. It's just very controlled and safe. Also, you don't see any of these cars because they're all parked inside. The other issues here are really just to be able to create what the master plan is called for. It's really more higher density, higher quality student housing near campus. I mean, this is a goal that everybody has. And what that does, any kind of housing in a community like Houghton, we're seeing this in Marquette too, is that there's a demand for housing at all levels. And so when you create any kind of housing, you're now opening up other housing. So by doing some nice high quality student housing, houses will be once again relieved from their burden of students living in them and can turn again back into single family houses. So this kind of action actually just stirs the pot, stimulates other development to come in and fill those places that students will now leave. So I'm also available during your discussion for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Come up then.
while I appreciate what Mr. Colton said, I have a problem with this whole nationally, what's going on at other universities, and I believe that it should be just about Houghton and what goes on with Houghton. So, that being said, the area along College Avenue where these lots requesting rezoning are situated is zoned R3. And it's R3 up and down College Avenue, and it's existed for many years. Why was R3 originally initiated by the city, requiring one space for every bedroom in a rental property? Because a parking problem existed then, and it continues to exist now, only worse. Steps from this proposed development, my multi-unit apartment building at 1308 College was required to have one parking space for every bedroom when it was constructed. That was also the case when the multi-unit building across the street from these lots at 1202 College was constructed. And it was the case when just last year, the multi-unit building at 1114 College was repurposed. It provided one parking space for every bedroom in the building. Within walking distance from these lots, that's 405 McGinnis Drive and 1757 Upland, which are two much larger multi-unit apartment buildings. The landowner provided the required amount of parking spaces under the zoning. Parking in a multi-unit building is the landowner's responsibility, and all these landowners did the responsible thing and provided the required number of parking spaces under the then applicable zoning. So what makes this proposed multi-unit development any different than the multi-unit developments I just mentioned that justifies the landowner not being required to provide the adequate amount of parking for the number of bedrooms in the property? 116 proposed bedrooms, but can only supply 88 parking spaces because, quote, requiring one spot for each bed requires us to spend $1 million more. All other multi-unit building owners spent what was needed to provide the required parking, or they wouldn't have commenced with these projects. The majority of students have vehicles. This fact has come up in discussions at many recent meetings. As the owner of many rental properties in East Houghton, I can tell you without a doubt that for at least the past 10 years, 94 to 98% of all my tenants have vehicles. They may not drive to campus on a daily basis, but they have vehicles. They may ride bikes to class, but they have vehicles. And they aren't just going to class while they're here in Houghton. My multi-unit building is right next door to campus, and yet 98% of my current tenants in that building have vehicles parked there during the fall and spring semester. This supposed theory or data that on average only half of the student population at Michigan Tech have vehicles, I don't believe is true. I just attended a Planning Commission Master Plan Committee meeting on Monday that was attended by 2 staff members of Michigan Tech, where we discussed the serious lack of parking around campus and the issues it created in Houghton. And the Michigan Tech staff persons attending stated they don't currently poll the off-campus students for vehicle info, but they have had more requests this year than in past years for parking spaces for students living on campus. I have many Michigan Tech students in my rental properties, and nobody has ever polled me as a landlord as to what percentage of my tenants have vehicles. So without the data from landlords that house the tech students or data from the students themselves being polled by Michigan Tech, the statement that only half of students have vehicles, I believe is simply not true. The majority have vehicles and they need a place to park. Changing the zoning of these few lots to R4 just for the purpose of reducing the parking requirements for this project, because the developer doesn't want to spend an additional $1 million, will only worsen the persistent Houghton parking problem for all the surrounding property owners when the tenants of this proposed development have nowhere to park their vehicles because adequate parking wasn't required when it was built. Even though they may get calls or complaints about it, the police department can't issue tickets or tow vehicles on private property, so the landlords are left to handle it on their own. If you vote to permit the rezoning of these lots to R4, you open this landlord up to legally only having to provide half the parking as there are bedrooms in the building. 116 bedrooms proposed, so really, ultimately, only 58 spaces might actually be required under R4. The landowner currently proposes 88 spaces, but we all know that during the construction process, things change, the cost of materials change, and they all contribute to the financial viability of a project under development. If you would please, I'd like the council to take a look at the letter that was included in your agenda packet for this evening from Mr. Polson to Eric Mora dated July 20th. So as a rule, part of the procedure is that the council must consider 17 factors when voting on a decision to rezone. And in this letter, Mr. Polson has given you the courtesy of filling that in for you with his thoughts on the factors. But I'd also like to offer another view for you to consider on several of those factors, and not all of them. So if you bear with me, I hope I'm not running over my 5 minutes. Number one on that letter, the first factor, is the proposed amendment generally compatible with the existing use of the property surrounding this proposed site? You can read his answer there, but I have to interject that no, the Pearl Street Mall backs up to this site. It's not an R4, it's a very busy, congested commercial area. Number two, will the proposed amendment result in traffic congestion on the adjacent streets or create a safety problem? I say yes. 116 new tenants, of course there'll be congestion. While parking, while walking, it backs to a mall. And there's a safety issue on Pearl Street, as it's always an issue near that mall because of the constant flow of traffic to those busy fast food establishments, okay? Then going down to number 4, will the proposed amendment significantly increase noise in the area? You see Mr. Polson's response, he says it won't increase the noise. I say, how could it not increase the noise? 116 people living in one spot equals more foot traffic, more cars, more congestion, more noise. It can't be avoided, but it does come with the territory of a multi-unit building. Then down to number 7, does the amendment comply with the intent of the zoning district, the R4 zoning district? I say everything on College Avenue is R3. It requires 1 parking space for every bedroom. His response is this amendment clears up the irregular pattern of zoning. So if all of College Avenue up and down is R3, what's irregular about that? In this project, we're back to
We're down to about 1 minute left.
okay.
We have the 5-minute limitation.
Okay, I'll go very quickly. Is the proposed location appropriate for the uses for which would be permitted under the requested district? I say it's not appropriate for a multi-unit building that houses 116 people, but only offers parking for half of those tenants. Skip down to the bottom. Are there any other factors considered pertinent to the opposed amendment that aren't already listed here? And I say yes. Lack of parking at a multi-unit building must be considered. There has never been a multi-unit building constructed in Houghton that didn't have the adequate amount of parking for the tenants. Thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak at this public hearing?
I just want to start with, this project will obviously be my biggest competition, being in multifamily housing in Hope. And at the same time, I think, everything we're hearing is just, this project makes so much sense. Whether it's mine or somebody else's, somebody should be doing what this project developer is doing. We're living in the Stone Ages as far as what's being built up here for purpose-built student housing. And I think this project will help shed some light on what could be done up here. It's not mine, but it's a great project. As far as, looking at some of the points that were brought up, I just want to bring up a few things because we do operate a several hundred bed operation up the street with one driveway in and out onto a steep road. And as far as vehicles go and congestion, this is going to solve a lot of issues in that neighborhood. I'm in this neighborhood all the time. I eat at rodeo probably 3 times a week, and I know most of the tenants and commercial tenants are there. One of the issues this street has is every one of these houses right now basically backs onto Pearl Street, or whatever street it is that runs parallel to College Avenue. And that is just a terrible way to do parking. Having one entrance and exit out to College Avenue is really to help clean up the congestion in this neighborhood. When it comes to vehicles, the number of vehicles per tenant kind of thing, we've seen an average around 75%. I think when you get into these smaller buildings that have 20, 30 units, yes, you're going to see a higher percentage. When we start getting into buildings with 100 plus units, 100 plus beds, that percentage starts to drop. And then you look at, why do these kids have cars here? And this has been a huge conversation for years for us internally, is it doesn't make any sense. These people bring their cars here, they sit in a parking lot, and I'll testify that because I used to plow the snow in our apartments back in the day, and getting those kids to move those cars once a month to plow the snow is a nightmare. We don't need that many cars here. The kids that bring the cars here bring them because they live 7, 8, 10 hours away. There's a lot of different ways to solve that. The majority of the students are not driving the cars every day when we get these purpose-built facilities near campus. A couple of things I'd like to point out is, when it comes to noise with purpose-built developments, I think what we have to look at here is this is a well-thought-out, purpose-built, designed building. This isn't some house, some old mining house that was converted. You drive by right now, that's the I'll drink beer spot, these houses are. I know people live in these houses and they've been that way since all of you guys were probably in college too. And purpose-built really allows that to not happen. If you go up to McGinnis Drive and look at our buildings, I actually lived my wife and I and our 6-month-old baby lived in our apartment building for 4 months on McGinnis Drive. It was great. We didn't have noise issues, and you're not going to have noise issues here. It's purpose-built. It's well-built, well-designed, well-thought-out. So I think just in general, again, I was hoping to have some better statements prepared for this because I think this is an important step for our community to start moving forward and attract development. And I think this is evidence of that happening. If we continue to go down this road, we will see more development. And I think both the zoning and this project will help lead that way. So even though it's not mine, it'll be competition. Competition is good. It'll make all ships rise. So I hope this project happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak and come up and identify yourself?
Good evening, Derek Bradway. First of all, as far as this apartment building goes, it will also be one of my biggest competitions too, and I'm not against the development of new buildings either. As a matter of fact, I think Mr. Wilder bringing Mr. Olden on the project tells us that it's going to be probably a really nice building because Barry does nice work. I mean, that we know without a doubt. But all that being said, we also have to have the proper information of what it is that's being built as well. I know that it was mentioned that at the planning commission, it was passed unanimously to push this on over to the council. However, initially when it came up, it couldn't even get a second. Nobody would even second it until it was stated, now wait a minute now, the only thing in front of us is are we doing from R3 to R4? We're not here talking about parking. Now, I would propose that the major thrust of the request to go from R3 to R4 is parking. And to slide that off to the side and say, we're not going to be talking about that, is not genuine. Parking is the impetus behind this. And so we need to talk about the parking. And it wasn't until we decided at the planning commission level that the commissioner said, well, no, we're not talking about parking, we're only talking about R3 or R4. Then the vote went forward. So a little historical setup on that. And Mike, I know you're going to go away on that because this is what I heard, but I'm sure you'll have something to say as well.
Indeed, I will.
That's good.
Indeed, I will.
Yeah, okay, good. As far as vehicles, Gail's got it, I've got them. Obviously, Julian's do too. Mr. Levis testified as well. I've never seen as small numbers as Mr. Julian has just stated, but for the decades that I've been here, I've never seen anything under 90% occupancy. I mean, Tech advertises that Tech is not only a great education, but come up and explore the Kima. And the kids bring their cars. They gotta get here and they wanna either go to the Fortins or at the Copper Harbor, they have vehicles. When the city of Houghton decided we need to address the parking problem, especially over in East Houghton over there, it was because there were too many vehicles and not enough room for them. And so let's make parking a requirement. How many vehicles we're gonna have based on how many students are inside of the place. And this potentially, I submit to you, is a big step backward and going to exacerbate the problem. You know, as far as trends around nationally, I can't testify one way or another, but I can tell you exactly what's been going on here for decades. I've been doing this into my third decade now. There are vehicles. And these kids have cars. And they're all over. If this project is okay for R4, then potentially with 88 parking spots, the building could be 176 bedrooms. If there are conservatively 90% of the occupants have vehicles, that will leave 70 kids in that building that will not have a place to park. 70. It's not one or two, it's a ton. So they're just gonna start pirating around. Pearl Street Mall, Ed Meese Center, Jim's Food Mart. Maybe we ought to figure out the parking first before we create a monster and then figure out how to undo it. I submit that. And then one last point here. Actually, I will leave it at that and let you move on that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak at this public hearing? Regarding 2021-323.
We have some letters. Here's
All right, open right ahead.
This is the Houghton City Council. I am Brian Van Sickle, the manager of the Copper Country Habitat for Humanity Restore in Calumet and Houghton. I've agreed with the owners of TL Rentals Incorporated that prior to any redevelopment of the properties on College Avenue, the Restore will make arrangements to come in with several Habitat team members to reclaim everything that can be reasonably salvaged from the properties. I'd like to thank TL Rentals Incorporated for their continued generosity, and we're looking forward to better serving our local communities as a result. Please feel free to reach out to me should you have any questions. We have a letter from Kathy Kader and Joanne Roche of the Miners State Bank. This letter is written to support the above referenced proposed rezoning. The Miners State Bank supports the growth, development, and continued investment in the city. We are urging the zoning board to consider approval to allow this project to move forward. We have a letter from John Letman of Houghton. I have serious concerns regarding the proposed spot zoning of Block 8 from R3 to R4 and the proposed superstructure apartment building. I own 1205 Ruby Street, which lies directly behind the proposed apartment superstructure. I also own 1121 Ruby Street. 2 years ago, I took advantage of the newly created R4 zoning for the 1205 house and invested over $121,000 in upgrades. In return, I was able to grow from 4 tenants to 7 tenants, a win-win situation for both myself and the city. I was commended for my efforts by the council. Now I face the possibility of a large apartment structure right outside my front door. So much for seeing College Avenue anymore from my house. However, the biggest concern is the unavoidable traffic congestion that will occur in our Ruby Jasper Blocks area. To say this won't be an issue is unrealistic. This is Houghton in the UP, our students have vehicles. Case in point, this year I went to a total of 138 MTU students in houses and apartments, all in East Houghton. All of my properties are within walking distance of campus. I did an inventory and 129 of them have vehicles, even though they could walk to class. That is 93.5%. I would hope the council seriously considers the effect of this many vehicles in our neighborhood. That's all the letters, but we also were going to call Michael Wilder because he had some comments.
Sure.
We're sorry, it is not necessary.
All right, we're gonna get there.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Wilder, this is the Houghton City Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for the council for letting me speak. Maybe just a few words on the project, and I think Barry has summarized it very well. You know, we've owned this property, well, most of this property we're discussing for over 25 years. So as a family, we're local investors. We're really excited to have the opportunity to redevelop the whole site. I think from my perspective, this is very good for the city. It's a perfect site for a building that is attractive to students, that's walkable to the university. I think importantly, it grows the tax base of the city through this redevelopment. And as well, it incentivizes, and I think Mr. Julien said it very well, it incentivizes other developers to do similar projects. And I think as a city and as a community, one of the challenges is it's better for private investors to redevelop than it is for university to put up another dorm to address what I think we all see as a critical housing need in the community. We're looking here to build a best-in-class property, one that's attractive to cities, to start to students, one that, as you enter College Avenue, is a building that we as a family will be very proud of, and as well that the city will be very proud of. And I think to do a building that we're talking about, you have to have adequate parking. There is no scenario whatsoever, and I think Mr. Bradway put out some scary statistics that we would consider 176 bedrooms and 89 parking places. That could never happen, because that would mean the property is not attractive for us as an investor or for our potential tenants. So there will be adequate parking. It will clean up Ruby Street. It will clean up that whole block, and we're really looking forward to working with the city as we do that. So I'm available for questions, as I believe Mary is as well. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak regarding this proposed ordinance?
Christine Gradoff on the Planning Commission, and I would just like to say that there are a lot of issues with parking, and we seem to have this idea that we have to have free parking for everybody, everywhere, forever up here, and just judging from the traffic that I have run into every time I have come down for a meeting lately, we've got huge traffic problems. And if people have their cars right there where they live, it's so easy to just get in the car and drive, not even think about any other option. And we know we've got issues with public transit, but you're not gonna get any more movement toward having good public transit, where you've got it running all the time. We've got problems because we have a low population, but, we could coordinate things better. We could make more options available. We could have potentially remote parking, which Michigan Tech used to have, out on Dover Road or someplace. I don't know if they still do, but there are opportunities out there. There are places where there is pavement that has no cars on them now, the mall, places like that. I think we need to be looking at other alternatives and just saying, oh, all the kids want to bring cars, so we have to let them bring cars, because it creates other problems. Impervious surfaces. Surely the 2018 Father's Day flood is not the last big flood we're going to deal with. just the way things are going. We have to look forward, that's why we're a planning commission and making recommendations to the council. So nobody's, we've been talking to some of the rental property owners, and they're really not interested in charging for parking, because they say, well, then nobody's going to want to rent from me, they're going to go someplace else where they don't have to, but we've got to look at other options. We just can't keep doing what we've been doing, because increasingly it's not working. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak at this public hearing? Come on, Derek.
Derek Bradley again, sorry, remember something I forgot. As far as the entry and exit, and I'm assuming that Mr. Weller and Mr. Polson have this, but I would be surprised actually if they do. I'm not thinking that MDOT is going to allow the drive to come on off of College Avenue. They discourage that. If there is any other way possible, and I have talked to several at MDOT because I have entries and exits off of College Avenue already. And any way they can do to reduce the amount of traffic coming on and off of College Avenue, they will. And they're very, very firm about it. And so the entry and exit will be off of Ruby. That I don't think that MDOT, I'm really sure, unless you've got something else, Greg, that.
We have been in contact with MDOT. There will be one driveway on
Right, sure.
College, and that's it.
So MDOT has approved the drive on and off of College Avenue?
I don't know, we don't have a permit in hand, but they've incorporated it into the work they're doing. We asked for two, they gave us one.
That would be good news if they get it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak at this public hearing? Comments from the council? If not, I would entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported to close this public hearing regarding proposed ordinance 2021-323. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? This public hearing is closed.
Mr. Wilder, do you want to stay on the phone?
Pardon?
I'm happy to stay if you think you'll have any questions for me.
Okay, we'll leave you on.
Thank you.
All right. Moving along to reports. City manager.
Okay, lots of things in the last couple of weeks. As far as Public Works, they're actually working in tandem with Baco right now on a water leak which popped up on McGinnis Drive at a very inopportune location right at Woodland Road. So we're going to be working together with Baco to get that fixed here. I think that work's going to start tomorrow morning. But they've also been doing some other work. They've been preparing the grade up on Sherwood Drive for paving. We wanted to do some grade repairs. Once that road got pulverized, we realized that it probably needed a little more work than repaving, so they've been working on that as well. Also, installing some long overdue storm sewer up in the area of the Bluffs. When that road was put in, it was ditched, and they were actually installing some piped catch basin storm sewer up there, so they've been working on that. Haven't had too many of these in a long time. A water leak on 8th Avenue, they're working on that. And actually also, if anybody's been down to Gessner Park in the last couple of days, they're re-roofing the pavilion. We wanted to start that a year ago, but getting to it this year, so they're getting that done. That's the same crew that did the water plant, so I would expect that that's not actually going to take them all that long, because they got the water plant, which is about twice the size, done in about 5 days. So that'll be nice to see that roof replaced on there. That's the original roof when that pavilion was built, and hopefully we'll be able to do the rest of the building in a year or so. Other things going on, the first round of paving for our 2021 paving project should actually be going on as we speak. They were supposed to have started paving at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. They're supposed to pave today and tomorrow. They're going to get the east end stuff done first. That would be Jacker, 4th, 6th, Powerhouse, Lakeshore Drive. They'll probably move to 7th and then work their way west from there. The Houghton Avenue Small Urban Project has started this week as well. So there'll be work going on adjacent to Townsend Drive in that Nice Center, Jim's Food Mart area, as well as in between the courthouse and Quincy Street on the other end of Houghton Avenue, just down from the old high school site. There's some work going on in there too. So that'll be going. Of course, in the last week, everybody can see the pier is kind of in full swing down there. I think that's kind of an attractive nuisance out of my office when noticing 4 excavators down there, but that work seems to be going very well. Had a conversation with Eagle in regard to the electric vehicle charger grant application that we did file. And actually, they would like to approve that application. That was the indication, but they kind of came up with a counter offer that they would like us to look at, for lack of a better way of putting it, upping our game if we would consider putting in DC fast chargers as opposed to a level two charger that we'd applied for. Now, the reason why we didn't apply for a DC fast charger right out of the gate is because they're considerably more expensive than the level 2 charger. However, they did indicate that they would be willing to put some more dollars into that. So I'm still working through how that capital would stack up. But realistically, I'm gonna say this in a relative sense, for a minimal investment in additional match dollars, we may be able to leverage that multiple times into more grant dollars to put in DC fast chargers. So more to come on that maybe in 2 weeks or so. Still working on getting the final estimating, and we've got some work we need to do with Upper Peninsula Power Company as well, to involve them. This morning had a internet-based meeting, Zoom meeting, whatever, I don't remember which one it was, because I got a bunch of icons every time something comes up, with the Corps of Engineers this morning. This actually goes back to the flood. They had some hazard mitigation program grants that we submitted a notice of intent if you guys were interested. They seem to be very interested. So we're going to work through the scoping of that with them to do a kind of a more comprehensive study of some of our storm sewer systems, possibly recommend future projects, which hopefully would lead to future funding for those projects. So no dollar amounts, no match requirements that I know of right now, but this was a very, very positive meeting to have with them, because they called us and said, let's have a meeting and talk about this. So we're going to get them some additional information so we can scope this project, because this would be something, I think it's a 50-50 match, but we're also able to count in-kind help. So if Public Works working with them, which ends up happening most of the time, we could count that time toward our match. So again, we'll see where that goes, and once we've been able to scope that with them and get an estimate from them as to what it'll cost, we'll come back to the council and see if we want to proceed with that. I'm going to recommend we do, because anytime somebody wants to help us improve ourselves, we should try our best to take advantage of that. Other things afoot, the bridge, everybody's favorite subject. Yeah. Right now, I understand that this is from MDOT. I've been corresponding with Rob Turbo at MDOT. He's been great. We talk probably 3 times a week on what's going on traffic-wise around here. Looks like they'll be finishing the northbound inside lane next week. So once they finish that side of it, that lane is going to get wider, that you still get to use. And we may even have 2 lanes going in one direction. When they finish the southbound lane, for a while there might be 2 lanes, so everything may be, I'm going to say, normal for a little while. Then once they start the outside lanes, the closures aren't going to be as wide, so the remaining lane is going to be quite a bit wider than it is now, which should help that traffic flow, because Councilor Needham had commented that when it pinches like that, you really see people slow down. So hopefully this will be going on. So they've also brought in additional labor and a subcontractor to get them out of there faster. So that is a good thing. Other points, freshman class at Michigan Tech this year is one of the biggest, I think, in a generation, which is terrific. So we're looking forward to a good school year here. Enrollment hasn't grown as much as the freshman class has, just because of some pent-up demand and things like that, but indications are that's moving in a positive direction, so we're looking forward to that. Just a couple of other things. Tomorrow night's the last concert at Kestner Park for the Thursday night music series that Century 21 has been sponsoring throughout August. Uncle Pete's Barbecue Blues Band tomorrow night, so this will be a last chance for music in Kestner for the year, so hope everybody can turn out tomorrow night. Sidewalk sales downtown this week, starting here towards the end of the week. I know we've been trying to get things ready, move some signs out of people's ways and things like that. And that's going to coincide then on Saturday. Michigan Tech has its afternoon on the town this weekend. So it's going to be very, very busy downtown on Saturday. That afternoon on the town is 11 to 3. And that's always a great event for new students to get out and get acquainted with what downtown has and the organizations locally. Just a couple of other things. I want to do a shout out to we had a retirement up at Public Works. Brent Leonard, people know him as Lenny, worked for the city for 26 years, and he's retired. He put his last shift in here just a little ways back, and going to have it be formally finished here when he in a month or so here. So I just want to thank Brent for his service. He finished off as the lead person up there at Public Works, and he's going to be missed. And so I wanted to say that. Now, just a couple of other things. Of course, I don't know if you guys knew Governor Whitmer was here last week, and MEDC Director Quentin Messer was here last week. All indications are they were a very positive experience, and I think that speaks well for what we've been doing here, and we want to do more of it. So it was nice to get some folks here with eyes on, because the state and MEDC has made some significant investments in the city over the years, and I think what I understood is they see how they pay off. So, and then I guess last but not least, this has kind of been in and out of the news, but I want to really thank everybody who participated in the census this year. The city of Houghton grew by 8.85%. One of 4 communities in the Upper Peninsula that grew, and Houghton County was the only county in the Upper Peninsula to grow in population since the 2010 census. And just for some rough numbers, when you really think about this, I just took that 682 extra people that are counted here, new people, properly counted, however you want to look at them. What does that mean? That means about $48,000 more road money in Act 51, based on the current formula. $48,000. It's a lot of hours with plows, that's a lot of potholes that'll get patched, that's a lot more repaving we can do. $48,000 a year for road money. If you look at our revenue sharing, that's probably somewhere around $78,000 or $80,000 additional revenue sharing. That's the better part of a public works person for a year. So when you think about it in that context, that's why we did that advertising campaign early in 2020 to make sure people understood if we get the census right, that's going to help the whole community. And those are just 2 of those numbers that's been a significant improvement for us. So I just want to thank everybody who took the time and participated in that, because it matters.
You want to comment on the Myers stores situation?
They can't get away from it. There's no news. There's no news.
So that's good. At least we're getting that help.
Well, it's yes, but no news is good news because nobody's getting any news. So it's not just us.
Okay. Others have comments for Eric? I just have one more comment. I heard the governor, when she was here, say at least 3 times, I really love this town. I really love this area. She even asked if she could come back and do some jet skiing. And I told her, Governor, you get back here, we'll try to make that happen for you. So I just wanted you to know that she was very pleased with what took place.
Well, I think there was a soft promise from at least a few people to come back and help us open the pier next summer.
Anything else for? All right, moving along, police department.
All right, our department answered 148 calls for service. During that time, we made 2 felony arrests, 7 misdemeanor arrests. We issued 15 civil infraction tickets. And we had 22 calls for health and safety. We were able to survive the MGU moving rather smoothly, considering all the construction. Our calls for service will definitely go up with the increase in the student activity, but we're welcome them back. We do have one officer that has gone to training, to retraining, which is our interview investigative training that's brought. And we will have a lot of training coming up in September. They scheduled away from the summer somewhat, and so September will be a big training month, and that's what our department will be doing. And a comment on, I appreciate General Sanchez's comments about our police department responding and Polly answering the phone, everything. Most compliments start with Polly, and that's, certainly appreciate her getting us out there, and I am still looking into the whole 911 thing.
Anything for John? All right, thank you, John. All right, at this time, I'd entertain a motion regarding our consent agenda.
Move to approve. Support.
Moving forward to approve the consent agenda. Is there further discussion? Would all in favor signify by saying aye?
We're gonna pull this from the money.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Will you poll the council?
Edom?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Irizarry?
Yes.
Cole? Yes. Backen?
Yes.
Suits?
Yes.
Salem?
Yes.
All right, that passes. We have nothing under unfinished business, so we'll move to new business. And A, proposed ordinance 2021-322. I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Support.
Moving supported to approve ordinance 2021-322. Is there further discussion? Will you poll the council?
Edom?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Irizarry?
Yes.
Cole? Yes. Backen?
Yes.
Suits?
Yes.
Salem?
Yes.
All right, 322 passes. Next, proposed ordinance 2021-323. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Moved supported to approve ordinance 2021-323. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to add something. I understand that this is not a parking issue, although in fact it will become a parking issue. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a step in the right direction. I said to someone earlier today, we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think this is a way to move forward. With regard to parking, I've never understood why free parking is a given. They have been in many university towns and you pay to park everywhere you go. I don't know why it is about here. I remember the first time they made tech faculty pay for parking. We were outraged. Oh my gosh, you can't do that. I think there's plenty of blacktop in the area, and I think it would be with Michigan Tech in particular to start looking at ways to use that. That's not our job as the council, though I think the city could be involved in it. But I think this is going to be a good way forward.
Thanks, and I agree with that, and to add some more, I think, so I have acquaintances that rent and own rentals in other towns and other university towns, and I think one thing that might get missed here a little is if the property owner here, if they're, what was the phrase, Barry used a good phrase, the market that they're aiming after, the market that they're after. I mean, and that's a big thing when you're developing property, there's a market you're going after. They're acknowledging that the market they're going after is 3/4 people with cars. And so they're gonna have some number of units where they're gonna they're gonna understand, the tenants are gonna understand they don't have parking. How they understand that is up to them. If they choose to charge a premium for an apartment that comes with a parking spot, I think that would be smart. And what that would have the effect of, I think, is what Joan sort of implied here in other university towns. The places that do have a parking spot for everybody, that's where those people will go. So those places will stay full as long as there are enough. And then the person who's willing to pay less than their neighbor in the building because they don't want the parking spot, they may live in this new place. I think that the more that happens, we're going to start to see improvement, and it won't necessarily poach from every other property owner because everybody's going to offer something that's a little bit different.
Other comments? Go right ahead.
Thank you. I thought it was a great discussion. The most resonating point that I heard was that this maintains the single-family housing stock. I think that is important for single-family homes to not be going off the market so quickly so that people can afford, people with children can afford to live in this town as well. I think that's important. On the other side, I personally, as a freshman, I wouldn't come to Tech without my car. So I understand that side too, that I imagine Michigan Tech attracts a lot of students with vehicles. So I understand that point too. On the other hand, I'm not a fan of urban sprawl, and that sort of comes back to the single family housing. If there's not enough of it, it's going to start sprawling all over the place, and I'd rather things be a little more dense where they should be, and maybe the public transportation and the other density of the downtown and the campus can complement that denser residence. And I think people need to start building around the pedestrian and not around the automobile. That's all I have.
Anybody else?
I think we've certainly tossed around R4 as an experiment. We tried it on a small basis in the handful of blocks that it was proposed in back in 2016. And it didn't really progress very far except for one property. I think the gentleman mentioned that. And it feels like we have to take this leap. It feels like we have to test this concept. And this is an opportunity to do that. And let's see where it comes out. It's time for us to take it. It didn't work on a small scale. This is a bigger scale. It's a bolder move. And I think we all need to pay attention then to how it progresses and what it provides our community with. Positive and potentially negative, both sides of the spectrum, so that we have something to look at going forward to make this a more likely scenario for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go right ahead.
If I may, just prior to voting, I just want to remind everyone of those 17 factors that are incumbent on the councilors, the planning commissioners, in consideration of how they're going to vote on the subject, and this is one of those subjects. It was nice to hear some open discussion versus just going to vote and then having to read these things. Now, I'm going to read these again, and I've almost got them memorized, but I am going to read them again. And I want everyone to please, and I know there's a memorandum in front of each and every one of you with those 17 factors. They're not in the context of this, but those are the same 17 factors that are supposed to be considered in all these cases. And I know there's a memorandum that was mentioned that was in your packet as well, where I believe Mr. Polson addressed those as a memo to the city. So number one, is the proposed use generally compatible with the existing use of the property surrounding the site? Will this result in traffic congestion on the adjacent streets or create a safety problem? Will it have a significant adverse effect on property values in the adjacent area? Will it increase noise in the area? Will it satisfy a need in the community? Is it compatible with the master plan for that area? Does it comply with the intent of the zoning district? Is it an appropriate location for all of the uses which would be permitted under the proposed district? Are the physical characteristics of the site appropriate for this use? Are there public services available to meet the demands of this use? Will it increase the taxable value of the property? will it constitute a spot zone granting a privilege to one landowner not available to others? Are adequate sites available elsewhere that are already properly zoned to accommodate this? Has there been a change in conditions in the area supporting the proposed use? Is the proposed use precedent setting? Will the proposed use conserve natural resources such as aesthetics and historic old growth trees? And are there any other factors to be considered? And again, this is not a score sheet, these are considerations. And a yes, maybe a yes or no isn't a positive or a negative, depending on the subject matter. But again, having learned from the past, I'm going to read through these so everyone's clear that they are considering these in their heads as they do go to vote. Thank you.
And keep in mind, if you're gonna vote no, give a reason as to why you are voting no. Okay? Do you poll the council?
Suits.
Yes.
Salo.
Yes.
Needham.
Yes.
Backen.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Cole.
Yes.
Irizarry.
Yes.
All right, that passes. Next, resolution 2021-1816.
I'm thinking it might be a little bit more than a month ago, I received an email from Miriam Pickens, who is working with Kingdom of Faith United as a group of people across all religions and all denominations to possibly promote Houghton in our area in the International Cities of Peace program. I saw Miriam was actually on the Zoom earlier, and she's dropped off. I don't know where she went, but apologize for that. But I know Pastor Beach, this would have been a couple of years ago, Pastor Beach approached the council on this very same thing, and I do believe that it came down to we didn't actually do a resolution as such. And I did forward that email to the councilors, just so you had some background on this. This was a ways back. I did forward that to the councilors, just so you could read up on what the program was. And one of the things, in order to kind of get this movement going, you've got a lot of people working on this in our community, would be for the city of Houghton to resolve, to aspire toward, this goal of which they're this International Cities of Peace goal. So I guess that would be the question, is there the will of the council to move forward in resolving as such?
So definitely yes.
A motion?
Motion, is there a motion? Yes. Lucky Beach, kind of like the 5 6 years ago, yes. We need to go forward with this. So, a yes on proposal 2021-18.
Support.
Okay, moved supported to approve resolution 2021-1816. Is there further discussion? Will you poll the council?
McGowan.
Yes.
Suits.
Yes.
Salo.
Yes.
Yes.
Backen.
Yes.
Cole.
Yes.
Irizarry.
Yes.
All right, 1816 passes. Next, resolution 2021-1817.
Jim, are you still awake? Come on up.
Come on up. The man of the hour, come on up.
That's right.
You brought a speech, right?
Yeah. Are you really retiring?
No.
Retiring? Thought about it. Well, at this time, Jim, I've got something I want to read. All right? City of Houghton Resolution 2021-1817, Resolution of Appreciation. Whereas James Gentry was appointed to serve on the Housing Commission in September of 1979 and was elected as the president of the Housing Commission in 1980, and whereas James Gentry has faithfully and conscientiously served on the Housing Commission for 42 years, and whereas James Gentry continues to serve and go above and beyond what has been expected, he has made it a priority to learn and adapt with the ever-changing HUD requirements and to look for ways to improve the lives of the residents that the Housing Commission represents. whereas James Gentry displayed outstanding commitment to serve and lead his fellow members of the Housing Commission, the administration of the Housing Commission, and the residents of Heritage Manor, and the Commission's other family homes throughout Houghton. During his tenure so far, James has served with over 36 different board members, 3 different directors, and hundreds of different residents and families. And whereas the Houghton City Council, by this resolution, wishes to express its great appreciation to James Gentry for loyalty and dedication to the Houghton Housing Commission and the City of Houghton. Now therefore, the Houghton City Council does hereby commend James Gentry for 42 years and counting of valuable service, and expresses its sincere thanks on behalf of the City of Houghton. Dated this 25th day of August, 2021, Robert Backen, Mayor. James, would you come up, and I want to hand this to you, and again say on behalf of everyone, thank you for everything that you have done. On behalf of the whole community. No problem, I enjoyed every minute of the way. And because you've enjoyed it, we have received the fruits of your labor. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
We actually need a motion.
Oh, we need. All right. Supported. Do we have to roll call this one? Okay. We poll the council.
McGowan?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Irizarry?
Yes.
Backen?
Yes.
Needham?
Yes.
Suits? Yes. Sail.
Yes.
All right. Very good.
Now it's official, Jim.
Now it's official.
There's cake afterwards.
And, yeah, that's right, we do have cake, so if everyone wants to stick around after the meeting, have a piece of cake and visit with Jim, be sure to do so. All right, next, resolution 2021-1818.
It's construction bills again. We've got phase 3 road development project for the sewer system. We've got MDOT construction invoice dated 6/8/21. If you'll recall, MDOT pays the contractor, then they bill us. The engineer reviews the pay estimate from MDOT. We go through this and then turn it into road development. MDOT pay estimate dated, construction invoice dated 6/8/21 of $169,958.10. And UK Engineers and Architects outstanding invoice dated 8/5/21 of $5,956.76 for a grand total of $175,914.86, of which, once this is approved, we would order those dollars from USDA.
Move to approve as presented.
Support. Okay, move support to approve resolution 2021-1818. Is there further discussion? Will you poll the council?
Needham?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Irizarry?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Backen?
Yes.
Suits? Yes. Sail.
Yes.
All right, that passes. Next, resolution 2021-1819.
And this is the same thing for the water. There were no water items on this particular MDOT invoice, but we do have UK Engineers and Architects outstanding invoice dated 8/5/21 for $5,808, which we would order up for road development as well.
Will entertain a motion.
So moved. Support.
Move supported to approve resolution 2021-1819. Is there further discussion? Will you poll the council?
Sail.
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Irizarry?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Backen?
Yes.
Needham?
Yes.
Suits? Yes.
All right, that passes. Next, CGA for water-related infrastructure grant.
So a CGA is a certified grant administrator. If you recall, a couple of weeks ago, we approved contracts for the engineering design and the environmental assessment work. In the interceding time, we, through with MEDC's approval, MEDC of the other two, they went out and put out an RFP on our behalf for a certified grant administrator, which is one of their requirements for this. They require somebody certified to administer the grant, thus the name. So they put this out, and there's a kind of a scoring rubric that is part of this, the boilerplate. They put this out on a statewide notice. We did receive 2 proposals back, one from Western Upper Peninsula Planning and Development Region, Whooper, as everybody knows them. They're a certified grant administrator, and Northern Consultants, as you can see by the memo on the top, based on the point system, Whooper came in with the high points at 85 points and requesting the council's concurrence to award the certified grant administrator portion of the water-related infrastructure grant program to Whooper, and that's actually a cost that MEDC covers 100%.
We're looking for a motion.
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported to approve. Is there further discussion?
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Where did the rubric come from? Was this a state designated rubric?
This is one they provided us, yeah.
Because, I mean, it looks like, I mean, I read through the resumes of both of the groups. Very impressive. It does seem that Northern Consultants is pretty much, I kind of like the fact that they are certified Section 3 minority based in the city of Houghton. I do notice that their fee is quite a bit higher. Yeah, I was just kind of curious as to why 50 points would seem huge in light of all the others. Was freaking out at that number.
Well, that was
the state.
That was the rubric.
Nothing they can do.
Well, I mean, we can make modifications to it, but that's the standard rubric that they use. So we followed that, and being that it's, you know, they are the ones that are funding this portion of it, that, you know, we're going to use their rubric
Gotcha.
fairly closely.
Thank you.
Other discussion? We poll the council.
Needham?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Irizarry?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Stafford?
Yes.
Six?
Yes.
Salem?
Yes.
All right, that passes. Next, special land use permit for 1301 Ridge Road.
So I had in your packets and prepared a memorandum prior to the planning commission meeting last night. At last night's planning commission, the request for a special land use permit at 1301 Ridge Road for the Nirvana Center in Michigan to potentially site an adult use marijuana facility. I keep forgetting the exact terminology we're supposed to use.
Retail marijuana.
A marijuana retail.
Marijuana retail.
At 1301 Ridge Road, and had that discussion at the planning commission last night, and the planning commission had unanimously approved that to forward to the council, because the council actually issues a special land use permit. Their application showed that the proposed use was in compliance with our ordinance that was passed by the council. Meets all the criteria for that. Of course, they're going to make any material changes to the building or site. They'd have to go through site plan review, and they've still got a permitting process to go through, but this would be the first step, would be the special land use permit.
Entertain a motion.
Make that motion.
Support.
Moved and supported to allow for the special land use permit for 1301 Ridge Road. To further discussion. Yes.
Guess what I have to read?
But could I ask a question?
Yes,
And this actually plays to one of the items, which is, does this fill a need in the community? And has there been any study, do we really need a fourth marijuana retail in this community?
I am going to say the market will decide that.
Because I've been by those other, I drive by every day on my way to work, I'm not seeing lines in the parking lot.
You know, honestly, you can go back over the years, how many auto parts dealers do we need? How many pizza shops do we need? The market decides that eventually. And I think I heard from some wise man once upon a time that it's not the city's job to pick winners and losers. The market will decide how many of these facilities are viable within the community. And, you know, the zoning district in which it's located was chosen to isolate those facilities in that particular district.
No, I did seem to fill all the tick all the boxes, but I was just kind of questioning whether we really needed another one.
We did allow for 4 permits, though, didn't we, when we decided to allow this district? This is the 4th, or?
No, there's
There's
no limitation.
Okay, I thought there was a limit.
There was some talk.
There was some talk of that, and ultimately, what it comes down to is there's some practical and geographical limitations to how many would be in there. I'm sure somebody could buy a building and take it down on one of those other lots, but again, it's a market, and a lot of this is gonna be governed by the laws of economics. And, so.
I've driven up there a couple times now to look at that area, and when you look there, you're really, it's not gonna be that much of a difference, really. When we originally had a site plan on that, it's not gonna be a big site difference, it's just like having another restaurant, or, another fast food place. Unfortunately.
So if I may, so we could make sure that we're satisfying some legal obligations in these considerations, I want the councilors, but prior to them voting, to consider these 17 factors in how they do vote. Is this generally compatible with the existing use of the property surrounding the proposed site? Will this result in traffic congestion on the adjacent streets or create a safety problem? Will it have a significant adverse effect on property values in the adjacent area? Will it significantly increase noise in the area? Will the proposed use satisfy a need in the community? Is it compatible with the master plan for that area? Does it comply with the intent of the zoning district? Is the location an appropriate location for all of the uses which would be permitted under the special use permit? Are the physical characteristics of the site appropriate for the proposed? Are the public services available to meet the demands of the proposed? Will the proposed use increase the taxable value of the property? Will this constitute a spot zone? Again, these are 17 factors that are catch-alls, but creating special privilege to one landowner or not available or otherwise not available to others. Are adequate sites available elsewhere that are properly zoned? Again, this is a special use permit, we use these same factors. Has there been a change in conditions supporting this use? Is it precedent setting? Does it conserve natural resources such as aesthetics and historical growth trees? And are there any other factors? Again, this isn't the yeses and nos are not necessarily positive or negative for the context of the request.
Thank you. And again, if you're gonna vote no, please state a reason why you are voting no. You need poll the council.
Paul.
Yes.
Singleton.
Yes.
Suits.
Yes.
Eden.
Yes.
Dakin.
Yes.
Dolan.
Yes.
Irizarry.
Yes. All right, and that passes. Next, future agenda items. Do you have anybody? None. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, support? All right, all in favor said aye, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. And again, Jim, thank you.